And there we are, Susan Michelle. This mic is all yours.
Hi, it is great to be here as always. I am here in Western Massachusetts, and I am the author of Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to embody the knowledge of. And I'm so grateful for this platform, and I'm so grateful for everyone here that's here with me. And I know Myrna and Gloria will be speaking throughout the hour, but whoever else wants to talk, I'd love to hear from anyone in the room. Just raise your hand, let us know. Myrna is in Boca Raton. You look so beautiful, Myrna. How are you?
Thank you. You too, sweetie. I'm wonderful. You're not going to get a different answer from me. Wonderful. O-N-E, one, as we're one. That's what Doug pointed out last week. So it's a good word.
It's a great word. I know. O-N-E, full. Yep, we're always better when we're together.
Mhm.
Uh, and Myrna is the author of Private Lessons with Jesus, which is just a wonderful companion to A Course in Miracles workbook for students. And I love, love, love her book, along with her 6 other books. So you're quite an author, Myrna. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I like writing. I discovered that writing for me, when I write, it's like I don't know where the time goes. I really don't. I'm so drawn into it that it could be 3 hours later and it feels like 20 minutes. And Glorian was saying just before, the 90-minute session that you do, on Pal Talk, it's wonderful. I mean, because the time just evaporates. So, and I have to just mention that Rob Schwartz also conveyed that once to me, that if you're really doing something and the time seems to just disappear, it's because you're really serving your purpose. That's a good notion.
Oh, I totally believe that. I totally believe that. Time stands still. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And then Glorian is here as well from New York.
Hi,
It's so
I love,
wonderful to see you, Glorian. How are you?
thank you. I'm great. I love being here with both of you, and you're wonderful. And you were talking about gratitude, so I just think it's terrific. And I like what Myrna said there because, yeah, if we have our mind aligned with truth, linear time does disappear. So that's what we that's our goal is to keep our focus on presence. So thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, if we keep right, it's like when time stands still, when we're fully present in the now, that's where God is. So I love what you said about writing. I mean, sometimes when I write, I feel like I lose track of time. Other times it's really an effort. So I guess it depends where my head is at. I'm trying to think now of activities that I when I embark upon them, I feel like I just lose track of time. I will say meditation for sure. I definitely know that, my soul needs meditation in this lifetime. I don't think it's for everyone, but it is for me because I do lose track of time in meditation. So, um, I think I'm going to start out instead of the introduction of my book today. I'm going to start out with Dove's suggested paragraph that he suggested to me quite a few years ago. I think it's really beautiful here. It's in chapter 2. And what Jesus writes is he writes, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. And I think this is just such a beautiful paragraph because it's all about I guess accepting everything exactly as it is right here, right now, accepting the fact that wherever we are, that's just exactly where we're supposed to be. Whoever we're speaking to is exactly who's supposed to be in our arena, our area, our experience. And it's about trust, I think, trust, to rely upon spirit totally, just really trusting in God, trusting in our divine guidance. So it was, so interesting. To be completely transparent, I continue to vacillate. I mean, that's what I do. I go in and out of alignment with self. And I was feeling a little stressed at the gym. There was some work challenges that I was contemplating and irritated about. So I go into the restroom and I looked at a certain shelf and I saw this little pamphlet and I thought it was interesting where it was placed. And I looked at the pamphlet and it was a Christian little pamphlet that I assume someone from a traditional Christian background put there, because I've seen this done so many times, because they are spreading the word of Jesus, which is what it is. And then I noticed there was something on top of this little booklet, and I thought it was just a piece of garbage or something. So I went to take off whatever was on top of the little pamphlet, and then I noticed it wasn't garbage. It was a little doll of Jesus Christ. And this little doll was saying, Jesus loves you. And I thought that was so beautiful, because obviously, as a Course in Miracles student, I love Jesus just as much as any traditional Christian religion. And so I took the little, I assume whoever left it there for somebody to pick up. So I picked up the little Jesus loves you doll, and now I'm putting it in my car so I can remember how much Jesus loves me, because I know he does. I mean, I know our belief of Jesus is a little different than the traditional Christian, because of course he's something not outside me. That Christ-like energy is something inside me. We call it Christ consciousness, but it's still important to just realize how loved and how important we are at all times. That's what I'm constantly disciplining my mind to connect to, that unconditional, loving, compassionate, abundant mindset. Right, Myrna?
I love that you brought that up. I do, because you talk about Jesus, and I always have a Jesus story. And and like you said, it's the faith, it's the love that you feel that really connects you to the wholeness of the beauty of the loving connection that we have with spirit. And who is it? The core of spirit, to me, it's Jesus. Anyway, this morning, I have this refrigerator. I've had it maybe 6 months, and it's something that started to beep, 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 beep. So then, there's a little icon on the panel there, and it said, turn the alarm off. I turn it off. I don't even know why it's beeping like that. It's going beep, 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 beep. This is I turn it off. It stops for maybe 5 minutes or so, and then it's beep, beep. I said, this is going to drive me crazy. So who do I turn to? Jesus, Jesus, can you stop that, please? I'm going to go nuts. And believe it or not, I turn it off. Okay, the alarm off. I'm expecting it to go back on 5 minutes later, and it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. And I said to Jesus, I knew you were a carpenter, but I didn't know you were an electrician too. That's what, the connection. That's what I how I just evaluated this whole thing. But I'm laughing, and he makes me laugh. He really does. One time I remember, and I discussed this with you too, and I said to Jesus, oh, I was complaining and hurting, and how can I give this up? And I had such a difficult childhood, and look what, and all that stuff. And the answer that came to me loud and clear is, well, what are you complaining about? Look what happened to me. Okay, not that he was complaining, but this was, all I can tell you is that thought and that line that kind of popped into my head made me laugh. And I don't think that I ever had the same type of anger or looking back at my childhood with any kind of retribution. It was that feeling and that line alone was all that I needed. So, as you say, it's all about trust, it's all about love. And if we can just let it go, just know that, it's all okay. Uh, and I think I've come to that point. I think that was, well, one of the lessons in the Course in Miracles says that really the purpose of our life really is to learn forgiveness. It does say that. That's your salvation in forgiveness. And if that's my salvation and I just need to forgive, then that is my purpose. So forgiveness is a very important part of my learning expedition through this world, through navigating in the world, not of the world, in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Glorian?
Wow, wonderful. I love that, Myrna. I really love your communication link with Jesus, with Spirit, and the dialogue that you share and how it comes to you and how it's imparted to you. It's beautiful. And yeah, our purpose being forgiveness, that recognition that I'm forgiving when I'm willing not to judge. And God's will for me is perfect happiness. Today's lesson, we can only be perfectly happy if we align ourselves with the truth of what we are. Um, and what Susan was saying about mindset is just so important. Peace will come to those whose mind is fixed on me. And if we're recognized, and I said this before, if we're reading, studying, meditating, and choosing to share our thoughts and ideas, teaching in A Course in Miracles, that's keeping our mind focused on Christ. And then the other times when we're not, when we wander into temptation, it's just that remembering, that willingness to bring our mindset back to presence, back to the awareness of our soul and what we truly are. And I love the idea of your little Jesus loves you doll. And that's just great. I'd love to see it. But that recognition that we could use anything that has meaning for us and put it around and remind ourselves, keeping our mind set on God, of whatever little thing it is that brings our awareness back to that, back to God, back to Christ, back to our ministry, back to the truth of what we are. And I know, so even if it's taking like a little course snippets and putting them on little stickies and putting them around, it's just that idea of keeping, where he says, miracles become habits. If we keep our mind focused and we're constantly practicing and vigilant for God and the kingdom, then that's just becomes our reality more and more. We're in that mindset of the Christ. So I really loved all that. And then you said too about, I'm here to be truly helpful. That's also a acknowledging mindset. I am here to be truly helpful, not the ego. The ego is not helpful, but bringing our mindset back to the focus of the I am, what I am in truth. I'm here to represent He who sent me, not the ego, the Christ. I do not have to worry about what to do or say because He will direct me. We're giving ourselves over to Spirit and allowing Spirit to lead and direct our lives. I'll take second place to gain the first. And that recognition that, if I step back, He will lead the way. The trust that the truth is leading and it's all unfolding perfectly. And I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. We know no ego anywhere. Nothing outside of ourselves heals. Only the realization of the oneness of the Christ that I am heals. And in that recognition of what I am, truth, love, accepting myself as love through experience, not thinking about it, but moving into the awareness of that soul presence of love. That's the healing. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you both so much. Very wise, very insightful. When you talk, Myrna and Gloria, and you always just remind me of the truth, and I always reconnect myself to God. I feel myself plugging into my God socket. So thank you for just reminding me of the truth. I think we all need each other. Um, That's just so very important. Myrna, you spoke about how Jesus said when you were thinking about some of the challenges in your childhood, Jesus said, "What are you talking about? Look what happened to me." And that is funny, you know. Obviously, he's talking about the crucifixion, which is more horrific than any of us will have to experience in this lifetime. He made it clear in A Course in Miracles that that was the last useless journey. And he also makes it clear that it's not about focusing on the crucifixion that's going to bring peace to our mind. It's focusing on the resurrection and realizing that his example was that fear has no power over us, because even though they tried to kill him, you know, he could not be killed, and he rose from the dead, and that was beautiful. So, and then Myrna, you spoke about forgiveness. I mean, A Course in Miracles is telling us that that is how we get back to heaven. What is heaven? Heaven is a state of mind, peace, love, joy, and happiness. Heaven is Christ consciousness. Heaven is when we have released the fear, and the way to heaven is through forgiveness. You know, I say forgiveness is not needed in heaven because there is no condemnation in heaven. God does not need to forgive us because God has never condemned us, but because we have condemned our brother, because we have judged our brother, because the ego, the part of us that's still attached to our ego, feels the need to judge. The way out of that low vibrational mindset is through forgiveness. That's how we're able to elevate our vibrational frequency and start connecting to the power of unconditional love. And forgiveness in A Course in Miracles is very different than the forgiveness that is taught in the traditional Christian church, you know, and that's something still, even though I've been studying A Course in Miracles for 35 years, that's still something I think that I struggle with a little bit, you know. I mean, in the traditional Christian church, you realize that you believe that the other person wronged you. So because you're the bigger person, you are going to forgive this person who has wronged you, but you're still seeing the sin as real. A Course in Miracles is giving us such a deeper meaning of forgiveness. Forgiveness is from A Course in Miracles perspective, is seeing through the error, you know, to the innocence in our brother. So this is how we heal, you know, so we forgive for us. We don't forgive for the other person. So again, it's because what we focus on in another person is what we feel within ourselves. So if we focus on the guilt in someone else, we're basically feeling the guilt within our own mind. If we focus on the innocence in another person, we're connecting with the innocence in our own mind. So forgiveness is really, in my mind, seeing through the error completely. You know, it says in A Course in Miracles, in the lessons, as we forgive our brother, we can feel God's forgiveness towards us. But again, God isn't really forgiving us because God has never condemned us. But when we're focusing on the self, you know, when we're focusing on the capital S self, we're focusing on the truth of who our brother is. So again, we're connecting to the truth within ourself. It's just such a miraculous way to see the world. I mean, a miracle is a shift from a fear-based thought system to a thought system based on unconditional love. So a miracle is a shift in perspective. You know, we can experience the same circumstance, but instead of seeing the circumstances from a fear-based thought system, instead of perceiving the circumstances from a fear-based thought system, we're experiencing the circumstances from an unconditionally loving place in our mind. So I think that is how we shift. You know, that is how we shift. We shift our experience in the world by shifting our mindset, by disciplining our mind. I mean, A Course in Miracles is mind training. A Course in Miracles is teaching us how to love more and more often. And sometimes, you know, there are feelings that come up that need to be worked through, and that's okay. You know, I was listening to this YouTube video today with Carol Howe, whom I love listening to. She is a great Course in Miracles teacher, and she was talking about how she was on her way to deliver a speech to a group of people on A Course in Miracles. And she had, at this point in her life, she had delivered like so many speeches she couldn't even count. She had spoken in public so many times that it didn't faze her at all. She, you know, did not get nervous. This was like having a glass of water. So simple, so easy. And she was on her way up to the stage to deliver this speech on A Course in Miracles. And all of a sudden she was petrified. You know, she just started shaking. She was so nervous, and she didn't know why this feeling of incredible angst was coming over her. And so she was trying to decipher what was going on. And then all of a sudden she had a flashback. When she was a child, she was taught to be a people pleaser. When she was a child, she was taught that you never want to say anything that might upset the other person. And she realized that if she went up and she spoke to this large group about A Course in Miracles, it might upset some of the people because they might not be open to the principles behind it. And her growing up in learning to be a people pleaser didn't feel 100% comfortable doing that. But once she realized where the anxiety was coming from, she could own it, she could release it, and she could move through it. And I guess part of the reason I like that story is because stuff like that tends to happen to me too. You know, that stuff from the past comes up. And I always like to see, you know, I guess uncomfortable feelings as serving a purpose, because it's I guess repressed pain points from the past that are coming up for healing purposes. And once I can identify them, own them, then I can release them. So ultimately, it's all good, right, Myrna?
Yes, it is. It's all good. Yeah. You mentioned before the last useless journey. Well, of course, in Miracles talks about that too. And what you're saying, you know, is that, you know, it really refers to the ultimate return to God. It has nothing to do with the physical. It has to do with the spiritual. And, you know, it's the end of the illusory world. The last useless journey is the end of the illusory world. And the Course in Miracles explains it that way. That once we've come to God, once we all arrive, then the last useless journey has been completed. And you know, it's also about the abandoning the belief in sin and returning to the eternal peace of God, the abandoning of sin, that there is no sin. And you talk about the illusory world, you know, we condemn ourselves, we're fearful, just as Carol Howe had experienced that fear that she had just before she entered the stage, but she was able to release it. So once you realize that it's an illusion, that you've got to get past it, and that is it's when memory returns to us, the memory of who we truly are. And this is what the Course in Miracles stresses to teach us, that the journey really is over. We think that we are still on the path to, the the illusory path of just continuing on and on and on without purpose, whereas we do have purpose, and the purpose that we have to recognize within ourselves is that there's no need for that journey anymore, that we've already become aware of who we are. And once we have that, it's over, and that's I see that more and more. The Course in Miracles has really taught me to experience that. And so, as I said, the journey is not a physical one, but a spiritual awakening where the Son of God recognizes that his true identity is with the union of God. So, yeah.
Gloria?
Wow. Wow. So much was said here. I love that, Myrna. Our true identity is the union with God. That's what Jesus tells us. I am one self united with my Creator. I and the Father are one. Once we move into that true identity, our problems cease to be. Once we accept it and allow it to be what we are, which it is already what we are. We just have to remember that where these seeming images are is only the light of God, that there's nothing here. These are concepts and projections based upon the false mind, which offer us absolutely nothing. Beyond every seeming concept is that light and love of God. So that's what we want to keep in our mind, so that that's what we see. God is in my mind. Everything I see, because God is in my mind. And that's the whole thing. The idea of recognizing that it's all God. That's all there is. I like what we started out with, where we were saying, I love sharing with the three of you. And what came to me when you were talking about that, Susan, is the Three Musketeers. But basically, if you listen to what seemingly is going on, then there's no coincidences, as we know, in who is to meet and who's to come together for the teaching learning situation. But if you look at it, that we're focused here on sameness, on equality, on oneness, and we're listening, allowing spirit to unfold and impart to us. We're as the instrument. I don't know what anything is for, but we're all listening to that higher mind and have the willingness to allow that to express through us. And when you were mentioning about the crucifixion, I was laughing because, it's a seeming day of death and horribleness. But if you look at it, it's really the day of eternal life. And I said before, next week on my Friday class, we will be doing a Good Friday class that's totally different from any kind of traditional thoughts and ideas of death and sadness. We're gonna focus on the joy of what's truly being represented to us there. And then about, forgiveness. And we're leaving that fearful thought system and moving to a thought system based upon unconditional love. That's what you said, Susan. And what was coming to me with that is, if we're in that experience of a thought system, the thoughts of God, based on unconditional love, then we're not in judgment. So then we're moving into complete forgiveness. And Jesus tells us, if you forgive, this will disappear. And it'll disappear because we're choosing not to have our limited beliefs, our false sense of being and ideas, guilt, fear, all of that to be projected out there. We're willing to have a different interpretation made for us. And if we're in that state of unconditional love, there are no thoughts. It's an experience, the unconditional, impersonal love of God, where we're moving into an experience of beingness, of isness, which is extending love and not projecting fear. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gloria. And thank you, Myrna. I know. I guess reflecting back on what Myrna shared, A Course in Miracles is teaching us to abandon the sin, abandon the error, abandon the release any guilt that is attached to mistakes that we've made in the past, because when we start feeling guilty for anything that we think we've done wrong, and none of us are perfect, obviously we've all made mistakes, but whenever we start attaching ourselves to those mistakes and hanging on to the guilt, we're siding with the ego, and it's just not going to make us happy. And as lesson 101, today's lesson states, God's will for me is perfect happiness. That's really one of my favorite lessons in the workbook, because I cannot be happy when I'm hanging on to any guilt from mistakes that I've made in the past. I cannot be happy when I'm focused on any mistakes that my brother has made in the past. So it's all about just releasing the past and embodying our innocence and embodying our brother's innocence. I mean, it's really interesting, like, on how the mind works, because the ego teaches us that if we focus on the guilt in another person, we're going to feel better about ourselves. That's what the ego teaches. And that's what we all have a tendency to do, but this is not true. When we focus on the guilt in our brother, when we focus on something that our brother has done wrong, our own sense of guilt exacerbates itself. Our own sense of inadequacy exacerbates ourselves, because whatever we're focusing on in someone else, we feel more so within our own mind. I mean, you bring this back to the crucifixion of Jesus, the people that were alive at that time had so much anger and so much hatred, self-anger, self-hatred, that they were projecting on a completely innocent man. I mean, that's an extreme acting out of the ego. But again, we all have a tendency to do this at a much lesser level on a daily basis. I know I do. So again, it's really important to just discipline our mind. And then when we focus on the innocence, when we focus on the beauty, when we focus on the love in another person, that's how we align our mind with the truth of who we are. And you can feel the shift too. Like in my heart, I can feel a shift. When I'm focusing on guilt, I feel anxiety. When I shift over to forgiveness and focusing on innocence and focusing on beauty, I feel love, I feel peaceful, I feel serenity. So it's just, A Course in Miracles is telling us that we always have a choice, I mean, the world is run on the egoic thought system, so we can always project our fear. And if we choose to do that, I mean, basically that's what's going on in the world today. But A Course in Miracles is telling us that God's will for me is perfect happiness. So if God wants me to be happy, the only way I can feel that happiness of God is by focusing on the innocence within everyone that I come across. And it starts with me. Sometimes I can be so hard on myself. I can be so critical of myself. So it's just really important to release that critical mindset whenever possible. I mean, the first paragraph here in lesson 101 reads, today God's will for me is perfect happiness. And I affirm that very often. Because when we're sad, when we're angry, we're just not in our right mind. We can't be a conduit for miracles when we are not aligned with the truth of who we are. I mean, we are all conduits. We are all miracle workers, so we are the faucet. God is the water. It's up to us to just surrender our will with a small w to his will with a capital W, so he can use us as a channel and we can extend his love to our brother. That's what a miracle is. And that's the only thing that will ever bring peace, love, joy, and happiness to our minds. So the first paragraph reads, today we will continue with the theme of happiness. This is a key idea in understanding what salvation means. You still believe it asks for suffering as penance for your, quote, sins. This is not so, yet you must think it's so while you believe that sin is real and that God's Son can sin. So God is really telling us in this lesson that suffering is not of God. God does not. So when I am caught up in a fear-based thought system, that's not of God. That's not God's will for me. So I think when I am suffering, or I believe I'm suffering from anxiety of any kind, it's just really important to, I guess, take responsibility for it, own it, and release it so I can get back to my right mind. Right, Myrna?
Yeah, I love what you shared. I really do, because this is one of my favorite lessons. God's will for me is perfect happiness. If God's will for me is perfect happiness, why aren't I happy all the time? Why aren't I perfectly happy? Because, like you said, when you focus on guilt and fear and whatnot, then then that's what you're going to feel. You're not going to feel the love and the joy that you're given to feel through the wonderful recognition that that we are connected to God. And if God is only love and love is happiness, why would we feel anything else? And you read the first paragraph of 101, and I'm going to read the second one. If sin is real, then punishment is just and cannot be escaped. Salvation thus cannot be purchased through suffering. If sin is real, then happiness must be illusion, for they cannot both be true. The sinful warrant only death and pain, and it is this they ask for they know it awaits them, and it will seek them out and find them somewhere, sometime, in some form that evens the account they owe to God. They would escape him in their fear, and yet he will pursue, and they can not escape. And think about this. What is sin? Sin really is guilt, and guilt is what we think that we did. That we should be punished. If you're sinful, then you should be punished. And well, who's going to punish us? God is going to punish us, right? And how can we escape the wrath of God? We can't. So we're running from God, really, instead of embracing God. And God just kind of smiles down on us and says over and over, "You have done, you have not sinned. You've made mistakes. That's true." And when I think about the fact that, when I start to feel guilty about something, and I think in terms of the fact that it's just a mistake, certainly a mistake can be healed, it can be rectified. Certainly we can forgive people for their mistakes, because that's all they are. A mistake is something that can be undone. And so, to me, this lesson is so powerful. It's just so illuminating, and it really teaches us that why we're fearful. Sometimes we think that when fear arises or guilt arises within our psyche, we have no control over that. It just seems to come up at random. But that's not the case. The truth is that we do bring it up. And the Course in Miracles tries to separate us from that. And that there's no need to be guilty or fearful, or the fact that we believe that we owe God some tribute because we've sinned towards him. And so this is really the undoing, the recognition that we need to just undo the fear of the unknown.
Very well said, Myrna. Very, very well said. Glorian?
Yeah, I love that. Undo the fear of the unknown. Perfect. Thanks so much. This is wonderful sharing today. It was coming to me. Yeah, we all have temptation here, and the ego speaks first. So we have to recognize that. And like you were saying, Susan, we become the conduits based upon our willingness to not listen to that false voice. Everyone here can be a conduit for truth if they're willing to do so, willing to surrender that ego and move into the Christ mind that actually leads and directs and works through us as instruments and vehicles. So we make ourselves available to that experience through our willingness to see it differently and to have it be reinterpreted for us. And today's lessons, God's will for me is perfect happiness. And the recognition that happiness and joy is found in that eternal now. And this morning it was coming to me, all of these things that actually we were talking about, my reflection on today's lesson, as we practice today's lesson, the first 5 minutes of every hour, let us remember perfect happiness comes from the acceptance of what I am as I was created. This is the only thing that will ever bring us happiness, not another better illusion, but stepping out from this dream of death and waking up to the reality of what I am. Remembering we have never left and remain safe in the kingdom of God, the Christ consciousness. There is no sin. The false belief in what I am has no consequences because it is not real. All we have to do is recognize it is a mistake to be corrected. No punishment, but a gentle remedy for a mistake. We shift our mind from fear to the love of God, the miracle where error is wiped away, and we rest in the inner knowing, that experience of peace in the eternal now. Happiness, this is God's will for me, and it's my own will. So once we recognize that our will is not separate from the Father, then we can move into that grace, that grace of beingness. And I like what you shared also about projection on an innocent man, and the idea that we're all doing this all the time. We project our self-imposed limiting ideas out there on the only thing that's ever real, which is grace, which is the truth of what we are. We block and obscure the light of what we are, our innocence, our sinlessness, and our guiltlessness, merely by our unwillingness to surrender and let go of what we think we know, and continue to project fear and guilt. And why do we do this? Because we made this. That's the whole idea. We're attached to this ego. We believe that this is real because we made it so. So ultimately, God creates and extends. So we're extensions of the love of God. But what we made was this projected mess of a seemingly hellish experience that we can be relieved of merely through our willingness to let it go. Thanks so much.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's so important to remember the truth of who we are as often as possible. And like you said, I mean, A Course in Miracles is teaching us to look at the world through the lens of love, to see it differently, to have it reinterpreted for us, because again, we can have the same experience, and before the world changes for us, I think we need to change our mind about the world. Like if we're not happy, let's say, with a certain situation in our life, there was this, I'm trying to think of an example of this. There was a song that the spin teacher played today during spin class, cycle class. And I thought it was like such a stupid song. He plays the same music all week. So I have 5 spin classes because I spin just about every morning, and he plays the same music. So there's this one song that the girl, the singer, keeps saying, if you don't like it, change it. If you don't like your job, quit. If you don't like your relationship, leave it. So she's basically saying that if you don't like it, change it. And I'm listening to her sing these words, and I'm thinking to myself, well, on a certain level, it might make sense, but on a deeper level, that's really not how life works. Because before you actually change the situation, I believe that God wants us to change our mind about the situation. Because if you, let's say, have a unhappy relationship with a partner, I don't think the best solution is just to find another partner, because our soul has lessons to learn. So before we step out of a situation, we need to shift our perception, see that situation from a place of love, see our partner through the eyes of love. And once we can learn to love the situation that we're in, then the universe is probably going to bring us into a different circumstance in the world. That's what came to me when I was listening to this song, because that's just how life works. If whenever I'm in a situation, no matter what that situation is, and I just step out because I can't take it anymore, once I get into another situation, another job, another love relationship, I repeat the same pattern, because my soul still has lessons to learn. And the lessons are always on how to love unconditionally. So I think that's really interesting. And I love what you said, Gloria. And it's about seeing it differently, having it reinterpreted for us, shifting from fear to the love of God. But again, we need to learn to love totally and completely and unconditionally, even if the circumstances aren't what our ego would call perfect. We need to learn to love completely and unconditionally and totally. And I can remember this happening numerous times in my life. I can remember one time that I was kind of taking a break from life, and I was living with my dad. I think I was in my 30s. And at first I was like, I shouldn't be living here. I should be out in the world. I mean, this is stupid. This is crazy. Why am I taking hiatus? Why am I just taking a little rest here with my dad? I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. And then I started realizing, well, maybe I just need to take a rest from the world for a while. And I started meditating, and I started praying, and I started practicing forgiveness with my father. And I was extremely happy, in the circumstance that I was in. And then all of a sudden, it was time for me to move back to New York City, and my outside circumstances changed. So it's really important just to accept, all things exactly as they are. And then I heard Glorian speak about, just strength, and what came to me is that image. And it also says this in A Course in Miracles, is that the lion and the lamb sit together in peace, because our Our true strength, when we are really strong, is when we are embodying our own innocence. That's our true strength. When we feel the need to defend, when we feel the need to attack, when we feel the need to be aggressive, that's all dynamics of the ego. But when we can really embody our own innocence, not defend ourselves, not attack our brothers, that is our true strength. I know that's in A Course in Miracles somewhere, and I remember that image in my favorite astrology books, Linda Goodman's Love Sign. She has this picture in her book of the lion and the lamb sitting together. And our true strength is not the part of us that feels the need to defend ourselves. Our true strength is not the part of us that feels the need to attack our brother. Our true strength is when we can just embody our own innocence. And even if our brother appears to be attacking us, when we're in our Christ mind, when we're in this Christ-like state of consciousness, we're not going to feel the need to defend our position. Right, Myrna?
Yeah, what you're saying, I remember thinking years back before the Course in Miracles, that strength lied in my ability to fight back, to defend myself, to make sure that, that I kept on solid ground, that nobody was going to take advantage of me. And it kind of made me a little obnoxious, at least when I think back, how much I've changed. I've softened so much since then. But the Course in Miracles, that's why it was such a great eye-opener, because it really made me see that's not the case. And as you say, the strength doesn't lie within our, the fact that we think that we need to uphold, justice, but it's a matter of forgiving and letting being the lamb, lying down with the lion, that we don't have to, really do it ourselves. There's nothing of ourselves. We can do nothing. And the Course in Miracles tells us that just let it happen. Just forgive and just let God take over. And I began to realize that is my strength. Forgiveness is my strength because I began to heal, the healing from the pain and the guilt that I carried throughout my life. But that was supposed to be that way. I was supposed to undo. I was supposed to learn what I'm here for. And I certainly believe that that's certainly been presented to me in a way that's been very useful, because I have been able to get to that point in my life where I will never attack because it doesn't make me feel good. We think it does. The Course in Miracles says that we think that when we're, attacking, that we're feeling good, and the ego makes us feel good, that we just kind of gained a few points, in that we've attacked, and now we're feeling better about it. But when we look at the feeling itself, it's not a feeling of peace or happiness. It isn't. And I began to recognize that feeling is not a good feeling. When at one point the ego convinced me it was. So again, it's a matter of just undoing and recognizing that we are peaceful souls connected to the glory of God, and that's how we can live and learn. And I just want to say one other thing. I read something on the internet. It was a quote. And when you said, that if you're not happy in a situation, get out of it. If you're not happy in a relationship, get out of it. If you're not happy with something, change it. And the quote that I read was, if we wait to see what happens, nothing happens. Isn't that great? Just those few words. So anyway.
Thanks, Myrna. Thanks. Glorian?
Yeah, I love that, Myrna. That's perfect. And as you were speaking, it was coming to me when we were having the discussion on the lion and the lamb. And it just came to me as Myrna was speaking about David and Goliath. And David really didn't need any defense except standing in the truth of what he is. That was his defense. And if we look at the lion and the lamb, we recognize that everything's a projection coming from within. So we're perceiving differences, but when we get to that place where we recognize that true equality, the true equality behind the differences that we seemingly see, which is the innocence and the love, that it's all one. So again, it really comes down to, I think, accepting our identity and forgive, and then this will disappear, where Jesus tells us, what your brother did not occur. And the only way we're seemingly thinking something occurred is if we're in judgment. So if we're willing to relinquish that judgment, then we're just in the realization of what's really there, what is really there, the truth, the innocence, the guiltlessness, the sinlessness of God's Son, God's one Son. And you were speaking before about, and you spoke about this last week a little bit, true intimacy. And it was coming to me, Susan, when you were saying this, has absolutely nothing to do with any kind of specialness. Intimacy is not specialness. It's the recognition of the Christ within. So again, we're saying the same thing with many different examples. And I think that the idea is that the healing comes from the recognition of sameness and equality and oneness. And there are no differences. There are no separate selves. There are no seeming concepts. There's just the love of God. And also, I think someone was speaking and it was coming to me that, there really is no good or any evil. Thinking makes it what it is. So this whole projection of duality is illusion, because if we're not giving it the meaning that it holds for us, it doesn't mean anything. So we recognize that there is no good, there is no evil, there's only God's love unfolding. So we take that opportunity to everything that we seemingly see, we know it's a projection of our own mind, a gift offering us that opportunity to make a different choice where we are recognizing that innocence and that equality and the oneness, where Jesus tells us only equals are at peace. Equality doesn't come to the ego mind, to the evaluating mind, to perception. Equality comes in the recognition that there's nothing other than the Christ. And we're all one. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you,
Beautiful,
Myrna. This
Gloria.
has been
Yes.
such a beautiful hour, and it is 1:59.
So fast. So
I know. Talk about being fully present in the moment. Time flies when you're living your purpose. Obviously, this is our purpose, right?
amen. Amen.
Yes.
Can I
So
just jump in
of
with one thing?
course,
I want to just jump in with one thing, which I just
please.
Googled this. So I just want to say this, which is, what it's all about. The phrase, the lion laying down with the lamb, is a metaphor often used to symbolize a future state of peace and harmony, particularly in the context of the Bible. It's typically understood to represent a time when enemies or those who are different will live peacefully together, like the lion and the lamb, without conflict. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful.
Beautiful, very beautiful. Thank you, Myrna. So, as I always say, thank you for being here with me today. What a beautiful share. Thank you, Myrna. Thank you, Glorian. Thank you, everyone that was here. I love you all. And as A Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Only the love is real. Thank God for that. Thank God for A Course in Miracles. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn.
Thank you guys so much. What a wonderful hour. And thank you, Myrna and Glorian and everyone who joined in. Such a lovely sharing. So thanks a lot. And we will see you on Monday.
Right. Happy Passover, Myrna. And Dove.
Thank you. And I'll definitely see you Friday for Good Friday. I want to join that.
Oh, good.
That's going to be
Absolutely.
at what time? 10:30? Is that the
We
time?
do it. We have 11:30. 11.
11, okay, 11:34. Okay.
See you then. Thanks.
Okay. All right, honey.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.